Hey everyone, this is Amy Jo Goddard, and I wanted to send you a little video and talk to you about some of the common patterns that I see in women when it comes to sex, and specifically what I would call giving away your power in sex. So, what would it look like for you to unapologetically claim your power with confidence, with self intimacy, and with authenticity? That really is the core of the work that I do with women. And the doorway that we that we walk through in order to get to that place is through sexuality, because if we don't bring sexuality with us, we can't be fully in our power. And we can think of many, many examples of women who have tried to do it: professional women, politicians, people in the public eye, people who have felt like they had to play like a quote unquote man's game in order to be powerful. And I've done it myself. Many of us have done this. We've been taught that there are these certain ways that we have to be in order to be powerful, in order to make sure that no one will take advantage of us, that no one is going to cross our boundaries. And it's really important that we learn how to do this sexually, because if you can do it sexually, you can do it in every other part of your life. And that is what I've learned. And that's definitely why I came into this field. People are always asking me that, like, how did you get into this work? I came into this work through my own empowerment process and through seeing what really emerging into this new place of feeling like I was in my power in sex and in my sexual relationships and with my own body and my pleasure and my desire, and really feeling like I could own that. That did more for me in the whole rest of my life than anything else ever has. Because there's just a way in which once you can really own that part of yourself, and once I was able to do that for myself, it impacted everything else. And I've watched this over and over and over with my clients. And so today I thought it would be really interesting to name some of those ways that we're giving away power in sex specifically, because sometimes that feels like a big mystery. So I would love to have you think about a time in your life when you stayed quiet about something that needed to be said or that you needed to ask for because you were afraid. Because you were afraid of what would happen if you stood up for yourself, if you said the thing that maybe was going to be unpopular or misunderstood, and what that felt like to forsake yourself and what you really needed in that moment. I mean, I think most of us know what that feels like, and certainly women know what that feels like, because we are taught that our needs are not important, that everybody else's needs come first, that we don't really get to ask for the things that we want. And sometimes what ends up happening is that we really hurt ourselves by not speaking up. And so this is a very core way in which we give away our power. So I want to walk you through, I've got a list here. I've got 13 things on this list. So I would like to take a few minutes to explore these 13 things with you. And these are ways that people give away their power sexually. Some of these examples come directly from my clients themselves. They're the exact words that they have used. So you might find that you relate to some of these because many of them I hear repeatedly from the women that I work with. And so if you want, you can just listen, or you can take some notes about which ones you feel like are more common for you, whatever works for you. If I were teaching a class right now, and this is actually part of my How to Be Erotically Bold class, if I were teaching the class right now, I would actually invite you to like raise your hand and like we would get all interactive about it. But I wanted to share this with you today because I know how helpful it is for women to get these more concrete examples, because a lot of times we're giving away our power and we don't realize how we're doing it. So here we go. So the first one is I have sex when I don't want to in order to please my partner. Again, I think that's one that a lot of people can relate to. A lot of us have done that. Probably most of us have done that. And, sometimes we're willing to show up in willingness, right? From that place of goodwill, where we might be like, I'm not super into it right now. My desire isn't like fully online. And I'm willing to for another reason, because my partner wants sex, and I want to be able to meet that need for them today, or because I want to feel connected to my partner, and that's how I can do that. Because I need touch. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why we might choose to do that. So this is not to say that this is always wrong and this is always a way in which we are forsaking ourselves. And you know the difference, right? You know the difference when you're having sex that you don't want to have just because it's going to keep the peace, it's going to make your partner happy, it's going to get them off your back, it's going to avoid a fight, whatever the thing is, right? That's a very different idea. So that's number one. Number two, I hold back during sex because I doubt that I'm desirable or good enough at sex. So I think there's a lot of reasons, and ways in which we hold back. We don't really give ourselves to sex fully. And a lot of times it stems from that place of I'm not good enough, right? It might be something else, right? It might be I don't want to be that vulnerable. I don't trust the situation. Again, there can be other reasons why we do that. But again, you know the difference, right? When those nagging voices are in there that are like, oh, you're going to get it wrong. Better to just not do it. Or sometimes we just get paralyzed and we don't do it, right? Third one, I can't reveal myself during sex. I'm afraid of being vulnerable, right? And so that's the piece I just mentioned. So a lot of times we're doing that holding back. We're not really revealing. We're keeping a wall up with our partner or partners because we're really afraid of being fully vulnerable. We're not sharing our wants. We're not sharing our desires. We're not sharing what we're excited about sometimes because we don't want to be vulnerable. So a lot of times we're withholding the things that actually can make sex really juicy and delicious and fun because we're so worried about being vulnerable. And the thing is, sex is vulnerable. If you really want to receive in sex, if you really want to have the pleasure and the desire and the things that you are meant to have, it's vulnerable. So that's something that somewhere we have to grapple with and find peace with and figure out the ways that are going to feel good for us. And this is a big piece of the work. This is a big piece of this journey for all of us, I think, no matter your gender. The fourth thing, if I don't tell my partner what I do and do not want. I stay quiet about my desires, right? And, I talked about that right at the beginning. I mean, just staying quiet about your desires means that it's not likely you're going to actually get them met. You might. Maybe you're dating someone who's a mind reader, but most people are not mind readers. So when we don't ask for the things that we want, the chances of us getting the things that we want are slim. So it's definitely a way in which we give away our power because then we're not having the sex that we want to have. We're not having the sexual experiences we want to have. We're relying on somebody else's desires for our sexual experience. Very different from driving a sexual experience that we want to have with our own desires and meeting the desires of our partner. 5, if I do ask for what I want, I often feel guilty or selfish and am unable to enjoy receiving. So again, there's all these mind tricks we play on ourselves, right? So it's like, oh, well, if I ask for that, then they're going to think I'm greedy, I'm selfish. I mean, I hear these words from people all the time. And so then if you're in your head thinking about that, you're, worrying about being seen as greedy or selfish or feeling guilty about it, then yeah, you're not really going to get to receive and enjoy the sex that you are there having, right? Number 6, I dissociate during sex. I'm so checked out, I let my partner do what he or she wants to me. It's like I'm not even there or like I'm watching myself, right? And so when I hear people describe what dissociation feels like. That's oftentimes what they will describe. They don't feel like they're there. They're like outside of themselves, watching themselves. There's no agency. A lot of times there's like total paralysis in that dissociation. And dissociation isn't typically very fun for your partner either. I mean, if you have a partner that has any amount of awareness and, understanding of, the differences between you when you're really present and when you're not, they're going to notice. So dissociated sex is not usually fun for either person. And a lot of times that comes from a place of trauma, that comes from a really honest place. And still, that dissociation can really get in the way of you having the sex that you want to have if you don't do the healing work that needs to happen so that that doesn't become the pattern for how you have sex. That often is what will happen, is that someone gets so used to dissociated sex that then that becomes their norm. And you don't want that. That's not powerful. That's not present. That's not pleasurable for most people. So 7, I use sex as a tool of manipulation to get what I want. So there's lots of ways that people do this. We use sex as a, Pat Benatar has that old song, sex as a weapon, right? Sex can really be a tool of manipulation. It can be a bartering chip. It can be there are many seduction techniques that can work very well for people to get the things they want. If you have an agreement with your partner that you're going to engage in those dynamics, great. If you don't, not always the healthiest dynamic. And so again, if you were to be more direct in asking for what you want and not feel like you had to manipulate or you had to use sex in that way, then what kind of relationship to sex could emerge instead? That would be my question for you if this is a pattern for you. The 8th one, I'm scared because I want to explore and my partner does not, right? And so exploring meaning like, I want to open up the relationship. I want to have a threesome. I want to try toys. I want to try something kinky. I want to do something new, right? I'm scared because I want to explore and my partner does not, and that might mean that I will lose them, right? That might mean that I'll lose them. So I'd rather not bring forward my desire to explore and to try some new things because I want to make sure I hang on to the relationship. And so this is one of those moments in life where it becomes I'm choosing myself or I'm choosing the relationship. I'm choosing my own sexuality or I'm choosing the relationship. And that's a tough one. And a lot of people choose the relationship and they forsake the self and they forsake their own sexuality. And sometimes people do that for decades. And then they look back on their life and they're like, oh my God, all of that sexual pleasure and that enjoyment I could have been having that I wasn't having. There's no time like now. There's no time like now to make a change if that is something you resonate with. So number 9, I worry that I'm too difficult to please and I take too much time to climax. I hear this from women a lot. I don't really hear this from men. That could be an issue for people of other genders for sure. But I think it's a really common one with women. This worry of my sexuality is too difficult to figure out. I'm taking too long. I'm worried that I'm a burden for my partner. And that's a terrible way to approach sex. And of course, if you're worried that you're taking too long, then you're not present, which means you're not receiving, which means it's going to take longer because you're not really there. Do you see how this works? Do you see this cycle that goes on here? So that's a really big one as well. Number 10, I'm afraid of being judged as dirty, freaky, or slutty. I don't know if you can hear the car outside. It kind of goes with this, right? I'm afraid of being judged as dirty, freaky, or slutty, or things like that. So I hold back what I really want. And again, this is a way in which women forsake their desires all the time because, the worst thing that could possibly happen is that we would be labeled a slut, we would be labeled freaky, used goods, fill in the blanks, whatever words have come up for you or whatever insults have been hurled at you. A lot of times we've experienced those insults and we don't want to experience that again. And so we hold back. We'd rather hold back than go for the thing that we really want or say, hey, this is my real desire. Like, what do you think? Or could we meet it? That would be fun. We hold back on our desires because we're so afraid of that judgment. And, the fear of being judged is one of the two most common fears people have around sexuality. I'm sure you can imagine the other one. The other one is the fear of being rejected. And of course, they're related. Ultimately, we don't want to be alone. We don't want to be told there's something wrong with us for our desires or the things that we're wanting. But if you never ask, once again, you're not going to get it. Number 11, I fake my orgasms. That's giving away your power, right? Faking your orgasms to make somebody else feel better, to pretend that you're enjoying something that you're not enjoying. Sometimes to get it over with. I mean, sometimes it is an act of self-preservation, right? It's like, okay, I just, I'm done. And that feels like a kinder way to say I'm done. But if you fake your orgasms long enough, it's going to impede your real ability to have orgasms. It's going to interfere. You're going to cross some wires in your brain. And it also isn't honest, and I know that many partners, when they learn that their wife, their girlfriend, their lover has been faking orgasms for a while, or sometimes for years, sometimes for decades, they feel terrible. That feels horrible. Like, oh my God, all this time, I thought you were having a good time and you were faking it. So I invite you to consider how that not only impacts you, but how that also impacts your partner. It's a common one. It's a common one. Number 12, I take the passive role and let my partner be the one who initiates because I don't feel confident doing it, or I feel like my partner should be the one, right? So just being passive in sex, not, again, this is another way in which we don't go for the things that we want. We allow our partner to initiate. We feel like we can't initiate. We don't feel confident enough to do that, which then means we're going to follow the sexuality of our partner rather than lead and share our own sexuality in a bigger way so that we can have the sexual experiences we want to have. This stuff's deep. This stuff is deep. And then finally, number 13 is I compare myself to other women. I feel inadequate and I worry about not being enough. Big ball of wax right there. I think it's really, really important as we are stepping into our own true power, our own empowerment, that we look at our relationship to other women. And, I've written a lot about this. I teach a lot about this. And I'm going to be talking about this at my webinar on evoking the inner fire woman that I hope you will attend. It's coming up. All of the information is in the email attached. So please be sure that you are signed up. We have to look at that relationship. We have to look at how we are comparing ourselves to other women, how we are in competition, how we tear other women down, which really is tearing down ourselves. It leads us into those feelings of not feeling like we're enough. It leads us into a lot of worry, and it leads us into some of the uglier parts of ourselves. And I've had to look at that in myself. We all have to look at that in ourselves. And we're all socialized to do this. I talked about this in another video earlier this week. We are all socialized to do this. So the good news about that is that it is learned, and then that means that we can unlearn it, and we need to unlearn that because we need more solidarity amongst women. We need more support with each other. If we're going to change what's happening in our culture right now, that energy among women needs to stop. And because it has stopped in many places, women have banded together and have made some real important changes with the Me Too movement, with everything that's been happening over the course of the last year, especially. And so this is a really important place to be doing our work. And if we're in that comparison and feeling our inadequacy, then we're certainly not in our sexual power. So there's so many ways that we give away our power. And if you'd like to learn more about these power dynamics that are keeping you stuck, um, and and really what it would look like for you to be more erotically bold, and you'd like to see the rest of that webinar, I'll just pop a link below if you want to. If you want to get a hold of that, you can certainly do that. And then this week is the new live webinar, right? This week is about um, really understanding what it is to be that fire woman, that fiery soul, that woman that is in her full confidence, as I said, she unapologetically claims her power with confidence, with self-intimacy, with authenticity, and with love, with love. And so it's about being that fiery spirit, right? And fire is really fierce, but fire is also warm. Fire is also inviting. Fire is tender, as much as it is fierce and bright and booming. And so it's really about coming into that balance in the self and claiming your own power, using your voice, standing in your truth, standing in your own desires, and really learning how to get the things that you want. So we're going to talk all about that at this week's webinar. I'm so glad that you're going to join me. And I just wanted to send you some other food for thought today, because this is beyond what we're going to be able to talk about. I've already written the class for this week, and there's so much to talk about with this topic. So I just thought I would send you a little pre-video and offer you some of my thoughts about sexuality and power and the ways in which we give it away. So I hope that this has been helpful for you. I would love to hear about it. If you wanted to share, I would love to hear your comments. Please respond to this video. That would be great. Pop some comments below it. And I look forward to seeing you at the webinar. So thanks, everyone. This is Amy Jo Goddard. I'm a sexual empowerment author and teacher, and I'm so glad to have you in my community. Talk to you soon.